Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Published Strong podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Pearson, and I'm joined today by my husband.
Hi, I'm Nolan.
And today we're going to be talking about Lars and the Real Girl, which is a great movie.
It is.
And we've actually decided, so for future reference, for those of you who are movie buffs and don't want to hear spoilers from us, if a movie has been released within the last 3 months of us recording, we're going to do a 2-part episode. So the first part, and they'll be released separately. The first part will be a no spoilers portion, and then the second part will have spoilers in it. So we went and watched Jurassic World on Monday, and we haven't discussed it with each other, which I'm okay with because we're going to save it all for the podcast. But we'll record a first and second part. And basically the first part for that one will include anything that's in the trailer. So the timeline that is covered by the trailer. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. You're okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, do we have any updates?
No. Not really.
I don't. I mean, we've been working on flipping the house. I've been working on getting brainstorming for a future series. I'm going to be asking my readers for help on it today. And let's see. All right, I say we just go ahead with the quote and then the tip.
Okay. People with goals succeed because they know where they are going. Earl Nightingale, radio personality.
Yep, Earl Nightingale. So it says people with goals succeed because they know where they're going. Why did you pick that one?
I mean, most of these quotes fall into two broad categories. It's having goals and then momentum, I would say.
Sticking to them.
Yeah,
yeah. Which is momentum, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just another goal one. I mean, obviously, people spend so much time imagining they're writing a book.
And not doing it.
Like, I'm world building. No, that's you pretending to someday write a book.
That's pretty much me right now.
Yeah, but you actually do it.
I
so
do.
It's different. I mean, you have to do that, but it's like, everyone's like, well, what's her face took like 7 years before she wrote Harry Potter. Yeah. I mean, that maybe, but also she wrote stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, write it out. Don't just think about it.
Yeah.
Actually write small scenarios for your characters and get going on actually writing stuff and then actually finish it.
Yeah.
There's only so many. You can't edit until you write. Okay. You should be polishing your written stuff now.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to.
You need to be doing that and then seeing where the gaps are instead of just trying to think through every scenario before you begin.
Yeah, it's easier to edit something that's been written.
Yes.
Brainstorming a series usually takes me a few years, sometimes just as little as 1 or 2 years, sometimes even a few weeks or months, like with the case of Shade Amulet, where I had a huge deadline and a broken finger and couldn't wait any longer. Deadline meaning contract, meaning I'd get sued if I didn't get it finished. We're not going to go into that. It was a very sticky situation that I'll probably never do again. Anyway, so yeah. Having goals it's necessary in order for us to know where we're going. And if you have those goals, it gives you a map for the future, which is pretty important. All right, so let's get into the tip for today. And that is, again, we're talking about book covers and cover designs and things like that. And we're going to go over best practices for this episode and then the next one, and I believe the one after that. Interview. Okay, so when you're searching for a cover designer, you want to interview them thoroughly. Don't be shy because they'll be just as unhappy as you are if the match is off. And BookBub actually has a really great article on questions you can ask before hiring someone. So go and Google BookBub, questions to ask when hiring a cover designer or whatever. And because this is your business, be ready to put in some work, even if someone else is creating the cover for you. So make sure you research the market and find out what is selling, and go through Amazon's bestseller lists in your genre regularly because trends do change. And check out the USA Today and New York Times lists. And I think you'll find that New York Times lists, those book covers tend to be a little bit more trendy or, eclectic. But USA Today represents what's currently selling, not what's been handpicked to be a bestseller. And you'll get a good idea from that. And if you create your own book covers, be prepared for the first few to need a lot of work, and you'll most likely look back at them and shake your head. So be ready and willing to redo as you learn new skills. And I still do that sometimes. I put together a book cover and I'm like, oh, that wasn't, in hindsight, that wasn't great. Like the box set for the Clinia Chronicles book cover. I took the main guy from the 3 book covers and stuck him on the one book cover and tried to make it work, and it didn't end up working very well. I didn't have a whole lot of time to do any more, so I published it, but I did fix that today and did upload the new versions today. So Nolan, note to you, we can start Amazon ads on that as soon as we've got that finalized.
Good.
Yeah, as soon as Amazon has that updated. And I'd like to start BookBub ads and things like that on those. He's like, all right, I'll do that in my spare time. Anyway, so our schedule, we're doing Lars and the Real Girl this week. The next week is Jurassic World 2. Then we have Casino Royale, Hunger Games, 10 Things I Hate About You, and Finding Forrester. And we actually have a guest who's going to be coming on with us for Casino Royale. Would you like to tell us who it is?
David West.
Yep, David West, who is our previously mentioned well-dressed author.
We'll see if he shows up
in pajamas.
And what he wears to this, you know how formal we are around here.
Oh yeah, so formal. I'm wearing jeans. And...
I meant like the room too.
Oh yes. Yeah. He's going to watch the movie with us and then we're going to record. And yeah, we'll do guests every now and then. I've decided that it's probably going to be limited to people that I know and whose personalities bounce well off of ours, and somebody who can be here for it, because we just don't have the ability right now to do online podcast episodes right now, where we do Google Hangouts or something like that.
Yeah, we like small technical hurdles.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll eventually get there, but for now we're not going to do it.
Plus we know enough people, we should be able to, every once in a while have somebody.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read the excerpt this week. It is for my book called The Shade Amulet. It's an urban fantasy, an adult urban fantasy. She's in her mid-30s. It's $2.99 on Amazon right now, and it will soon be available for free in August. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and read that right now. I have to remind myself to slow down, because every time I listen back over this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I charge right through that. It's kind of just in my nature to charge.
It's in my nature to charge money.
It's in your nature to charge money. Whatever.
Sorry for interrupting.
It's not in my nature to spend money. It's not really in your nature either. We could spend money, but
all that unassembled gunpla over there.
Yeah, he's pointing at things that he spent money on. Well, we're both savers, though.
Look, that's $10 and that's $10.
All right, you're right. We should probably stop doing that.
Probably.
Is that where you wanted this conversation to go?
No.
Oh, I remember what I wanted to say. So one thing, this is an actual little tip that you are unexpectedly getting, because I'm going to mention it right now, but my older brother does YouTube videos. His channel is Half Insane Outdoor Guy, and he does animals and camping and hammock camping in the middle of winter.
I was there.
Yeah, Nolan actually went with him on one. And
you could see me in real life.
Oh, geez.
Not in real life, because it's a video.
It's from the past.
You could see me in the past.
Several months ago.
During this winter, camping in a wind tunnel.
Yes, it was great. Anyway, so he's super passionate about those videos, and they're a lot of fun. I really enjoy watching them. And mainly because it's my brother, but also because he does a lot of really cool stuff. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He's working on a video right now that's on birds of prey that are in our area. He's done videos on tarantulas. And so if you know anybody who likes outdoor things and wants to learn how to do these kinds of stuff, how to remove a snake's skin that is stuck on it, he's done a video on that one. That's one of his most popular ones, actually. Anyway, so what he and his wife do is every time he makes a certain number of YouTube videos, they both get a reward. So you and your spouse, or the person who supports you the most, consider, doing something like that. Nolan and I are going to sit down and figure out, when I finish writing Lizzie's series, we're going to have a reward. And then
I get a Jeep.
Oh, do you get a Jeep?
Yes.
We haven't discussed that yet. I don't think you get a Jeep after I finish 2 more books.
Get to work.
You get to work.
Get to work.
Oh, me get to work. I'm like, I thought you said you get to work.
I need my recreational vehicle.
You do need a recreational vehicle. But I think we're going to probably need to write a few more books before we get to that level of reward.
Well, they have to be really good books, and it could just be the two.
Oh, so it's all on me then?
Well, it is your goal.
So I guess then you'll have to quit your job and then stay home with the kids so I can write it really fast.
Yeah, sure.
He's like,
don't know what we'll eat, but...
We have lots of food in the freezer. We went shopping yesterday.
We have like a week, 2 weeks worth of food.
We have spices in packets. I mean, if it comes down to it, we could just open those up and...
Clear our sinuses.
Yep. Anyway, so we're going to figure out goals that we want once I finish. And I'm probably going to go by the series. I don't know, unless you think I should go...
I don't know. Depends.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It depends on how long it takes to write. I mean, you could do every 2 books or every 5 books or by the series or whatever. Or every book. Anyway, all right. So now I'm going to go ahead and read the excerpt. You okay with that? Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. All right. My phone rang from inside my bedroom, and I sprang to answer the call. It's not that I'm super lonely. Okay, fine, I am. But jobs don't happen often, and I can't exactly drum up business by encouraging hostage situations and active shooters. Not only that, but starting forest fires is still illegal, regardless of how much I get paid for stopping them. Hey, Chief. Get dressed, Lizzie, Lehigh City Chief O'Hare said. There's an emergency out at Lake Mountain High School. A police escort is on the way. Ready now. As I said the words, I grabbed my purse, socks, and shoes and rushed to the living room. He hung up, and I tossed my phone into my purse and slipped my feet into my socks and shoes before sending a regretful glance at the bowl of cereal I'd just started eating. Sia, my cat, would probably devour it after I left. Sigh. I headed outside to wait for my ride. I'd only been outside for a couple of moments when 4 cop cars pulled up, their lights flashing. I dashed to the front car, pulled the passenger door open. Wow, that's really bad. I pulled the passenger open. Wow, I just totally interrupted myself. Little Temple of Doom. Nolan was doing the heart. The heart pumping in the hand. Anyway, I dashed to the front car, pulled the passenger door open, and slid inside. Chief O'Hare himself was driving. He glanced over at me. Buckle up, Lizzie, he said unnecessarily. I was already doing so. What's going on? I asked as he pulled onto Center Street and headed south. And why are you going out personally? Bomb threat at Lake Mountain High. We think it's real this time. Lake Mountain had a couple of threats in the few years after it opened, back before I moved here, but from what I'd heard, none of them had been real. What's different this time? I asked. Chief turned right on Pioneer and said lots of witnesses. Some kid called in, saying there was a bomb in the school. Officials followed protocol, put everything on lockdown, and called the cops. By that time, they'd already received 3 more calls about the bomb. Is there more than one student in on it? Don't know. How do we know it's an actual bomb? Chief gripped the steering wheel. The first kid who called acted like he knew more than he was telling. They searched his locker and found a suicide note. He didn't say where the bomb was located, but it didn't take long to figure out, as he had Jim first. They found him in the boys' locker room, with the explosive device strapped to his chest. Crap. What's the kid like? I asked, pulling out the state-issued ID that would get me into pretty much any crime scene. I wanted to be ready to hop out of the car the moment we pulled up in front of the school. Chief O'Hare glanced over at me. Not a stereotypical suicide bomber, if that's what you're wondering. He's popular and well-liked in school. Good grades, one of their best athletes. I'm not sure which sports team he's on. If that's important, I can find out. Whether he played basketball, football, or croquet didn't matter so much when it came to stopping bombs. I don't think I need the info, but I'll let you know. We were silent as we approached the high school. The moment Chief pulled up at the curb, I bolted from the car and fled across the pavement toward the nearest entrance. So, I forgot to give the preface about Shade Amulet. It's about a chick who does magical powers things. She stops sparks, So she has the ability to stop guns, bombs, and things like that. It's a lot of fun. That's my Coven Chronicles series. All right, you ready to talk about the movie?
Yes.
Okay. So let's dig right into it.
Lars and the Real Girl. It's about a boy and his sex doll. Sounds provocative.
Perverted.
Perverted, maybe, but it's not.
It's not at all.
Yeah, it is pretty tame.
It's really tame. It would be like rated G if it weren't for the fact that it's a sex doll. You know?
Yeah. And it is a sex. So let's rewind. That was provocative. That was we hooked you with the sex.
Yes.
Now we're gonna go back You're like, Ryan Gosling and a sex doll? So I will briefly introduce the characters and the general plot.
Okay.
So, Lars, he is, well, played by Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, who is also in what other movies? For people who don't know who he is.
I don't really watch his movies, so I couldn't tell you.
Is he, I mean, because somebody was acting like he's all famous, and
He is all famous.
I don't recognize him.
He was young Hercules in the Hercules Legendary Journey spinoff TV show.
Okay, didn't
in the
ever
second
watch
season. That's all I remember.
Okay, all right.
But he's been in a bunch of other stuff, but I don't care. So, anyway, this is the only movie I've actually seen him in.
Yeah, I think so. Same for me, honestly, because I was like, everybody's like, oh yeah, it's Ryan Gosling. I'm like, who's Ryan Gosling?
He is not hot in this. If he's known for The Notebook.
Was he in The Notebook? So he's supposed to have been hot in that one.
Yeah, because he worked out and stuff like that. I still have better abs than him, but that's okay.
Oh my gosh, everything's a competition to you.
Yes, it is. I'm a man. Men being competitive, you don't say. You don't say. Well, I used to. I'm kind of fat now, but he's fat in this too. So there. And
he's not really that fat.
He has this perv mustache.
He has a perv mustache, and his hair is greased back and longer.
Yeah, no one wears makeup or takes a shower in this movie, I think.
No, a lot of them are clean. Margot's clean all the time. Karen's clean all the time. Gus is clean all the time.
Margot is not clean all the time. Her hair is not the best.
Oh, didn't even notice.
Anyway, he's the main character. He lives in a garage apartment. His brother and his wife, who is pregnant. His brother is Gus. His sister-in-law is Karen.
Mm-hmm.
They live in the house that their parents used to have.
Yeah.
Before they died.
Yep.
Margot is, I guess that's the three principals, I would say. Probably the three with the most screen time are those three.
And I would include Bianca in that.
I haven't gotten to Bianca yet.
I know.
That's later. But anyway, so Lars and Gus's mom died when Lars was born.
Yeah, and it kind of screwed over their dad.
It broke, their father.
Yeah.
And he was super lonely, and when Gus was old enough, he moved out and didn't even think twice and just left Lars to be raised by a single father who
had no idea he had a child, basically.
Yeah, he's the reason their mom died. So he kind of blamed him for it and just ignored him, basically. So he's a very neglected person.
Yeah. And
the opening scene is him just staring out a window in this...
Watching the house
that he used to live in. Because when his father did finally die, he lived in that house, not in the apartment. So it used to be his house.
Yep.
And then his brother moved back when he got married. And he and his wife moved in and bumped him to the garage.
Pretty much, yeah. Lars went willingly, but he didn't, He
didn't fight it, but, anyway, it's him, and he always has the blanket his mother made for him with him, pretty much in every scene of this movie.
Yeah.
It's very important to him.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's the opening scene. It's him staring out the window at the house he used to live in, and then Karen comes over and invites him to breakfast at, 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know, it's dark outside. And he refuses to go.
Mm-hmm.
And
then he agrees to do dinner.
Yeah.
And that's when she's like, you promised.
Yeah. So he avoids human contact. He's a very lonely person, and she's worried about him. That's why she keeps inviting him to do stuff.
And she's the only one.
Yeah, she's worried about him.
Gus is like, he's fine. He's 27. He's a single guy. Leave him alone. He wants to be left alone. And she's like, no, he doesn't.
Mm-hmm. So Lars, very lonely. Karen cares about him. And is worried about him and thinks there's something up with him.
Yeah.
And Gus does not. He's in denial that there's anything wrong.
Yeah. He's pretty much a jerk at the beginning of the movie.
Yes, and before. Yes. I mean, he cares about his wife and his child. He's good to them, but not to Lars.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
he probably views Lars negatively too because of their mother, because he actually remembers his parents.
Yeah, he's like, mom. Dad used to have people over all the time. He's like, he never had people over when I was, a kid. And he's like, oh, that's before mom died, and stuff. He just kind of casually says that sort of thing, and Lars is just sad about it.
Yeah.
When he finally does go to dinner and they talk. But he just avoids people at work, people talk to him and he doesn't talk back to them.
Except for his cubicle mate.
Because he kind of has to because of proximity. And even then, it's very abrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he has a lot of problems just dealing with everyday people, relatives, anything. He just can't do it.
Yeah,
he's a really nice kid. People like him
Mm-hmm.
still because he is very helpful.
Yeah, he's charitable, humble, loves and serves everyone. He's a good guy.
Right, and we get that right in the first scene because when Karen comes over, it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
He gives her the blanket.
Yeah.
He does not do this casually.
No.
And when he demands it back...
Yeah, he's like, I want my blanket back.
Yeah, he's like freaking out. But he gives it to her willingly. We don't really get what a big deal it is. We don't even know what it is until later in the movie. And then you find out that him surrendering that to somebody is kind of a big deal.
Yep.
Because he like literally wears it around his neck like a scarf kind of.
Yeah.
When it's cold outside, but I guess it's like Canada or Alaska, so it's always cold outside.
It's all filmed in actually just outside of Toronto, so
yeah. So we're talking like minus 70, 40.
Minus 40.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in Toronto for a year and a half, and it gets very cold there. It also gets very hot there.
Yeah, I max out between like 40 and 75 degrees.
He's right.
I have a very narrow band.
It's like 93, 95 degrees outside. I'm like, soaking up the heat.
That's hell on earth. That's a blasted hellscape to me.
I love the heat, but I want the majority of my time to be spent in an air conditioned, unless I'm outside, camping or on the water or something. I want air conditioning.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm used to being by the water and wearing layers, and I've just never adapted, like ever.
To Utah weather, especially since it's so different from Seattle.
Yeah, it fluctuates. It's like, why is there snow? Why is there sun?
We had snow 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie takes place during a cold time. I mean, there's not snow on the ground everywhere, but you can tell it's cold.
Yeah.
You can see their breath all the time. Anyway, so that's like the opening scene. It kind of sets the stage, the loneliness of him.
Yeah, and Karen
reaching out to him.
And then Gus is not caring.
And then Lars also being nice.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not that nice. I mean, in terms of like being around people, he's not, but he does give up something very important to him.
Yeah.
And it's not that far to the house. But it is very cold and he just wants, to help her.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so that's the scene.
Yeah, and Gus totally ignores everything about his brother, and he, like, his emotions, like this guy, I would say character development is the strongest between... Karen doesn't really have character development. She stays pretty much the same throughout the whole thing. She's understanding, accepting, loving, Gus goes from totally ignoring everything from in guilt. He experienced guilt, shame, embarrassment, denial. It's not my fault. And what are people going to think? When he's like, what are people going to think? No. He says, people are going to laugh at Lars. And the doctor's like, and you. And because she knows it's not about Lars to Gus. It's about Gus and how people are going to perceive his brother.
Yes. So anyway, yeah. Well, we haven't talked about it. There is a doctor. Dagmar. Mm-hmm. She's the town doctor. They only have like the one because it's kind of rural.
Yeah.
So she's also like a part psychologist.
She's a psychologist. She has an actual degree.
Does she? Okay.
Yeah. That's what Karen says because Gus is
she has to go to med school and then go on and specialize. So that is not wholly impossible.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it's actually supposed to have been filmed way, way, way north. Like, I mean, supposed to have taken place because Karen's like, the doctor says, in order to live up here and to be a doctor, you have to specialize in pretty much everything. She's like, living this far north, you have to know how to do psychiatry.
Nobody's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
To help you. You can't be like, go see this specialist.
Exactly. Yep.
So you have to be a jack of all trades. But anyway. And then there's a scene where he goes to church, Lars does, and, somebody asks if he has a girlfriend, and, like, he says no, and he's, helping this lady with some flowers, so you can see that he's helpful again.
Yeah.
And she gives him a flower. She's like, here, give this to somebody.
Give this to somebody special.
Special. And then...
Margot,
the...
love interest.
One of the love interests. Yes. Says like, hi Lars, and he throws the flower away like right in front of her. Like,
it's like a really abrupt throw
unsubtle. Yeah, it's not very subtle at all.
He just throws it off screen.
And he just doesn't say anything to her.
He turns around and storms away.
Yeah. And she's just like, yeah. And then so next scene is work, I believe. If not next, the next important one.
Yeah.
So he goes to work. We're trying to do the setup here because it gets crazy like right here.
Yeah.
Pretty much. the receptionist is like, "Hi, Lars, how you doing?"
She
"Hey,
calls him Sunshine.
Sunshine. Don't you think the new girl's cute?" Who is Margot?
Yeah, Margot's the new girl at work.
Yes. And he doesn't say anything. He just like
stares at her and then walks through the door.
Yep. And the lady's just like, okay. Anyway, so he sits down at his cube, and his coworker, who's a skis.
Yes, serious.
He's like, "Hey, Lars, come look at this." And Lars is like,
I'm not really in the mood for porn right now.
He's like, "It's not porn."
Okay, fine. It is.
It is. And that's where he shows him the site where you order the dolls from.
And still, Lars doesn't really look at it, because he's a good guy. He turns away from it, you know.
And it doesn't show anything bad at all.
Just shows faces and stomachs.
Yeah.
Of the dolls.
Right. And then Margot comes in and says, like, "Hi, Lars, we're the only ones that live by the lake. We should carpool." And he just ignores her. And then he's like, "Oh, it's your day for coffee."
To the cubicle mate says it's your day for coffee.
Oh, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And he goes and gets coffee. So she knows that he can hear her.
Yeah, but But he
just totally blows her off.
He's socially inept around her completely.
Yes, completely. So she's stiffed again.
She gets stiffed so many times.
Yep.
She is a saint.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, it's a slim pickings in that town anyway, so...
Yeah.
Anyway, here's where things get weird.
Yeah.
A box arrives at Gus's house.
6 weeks later.
6 weeks later. They skip 6 weeks ahead.
Yep.
A crate arrives,
mm-hmm.
and Karen calls Lars and said, "There's a crate." And then he pulls it into his... garage apartment. And he gets all fancy. He brushes his teeth, does his hair while he's staring at this box.
Yeah, and the scene shows him like brushing his teeth and staring at it, and then changes. He's like doing a tie up and staring at it, and
tries on different clothes, and he finally feels like he's ready.
He's like getting ready for a date, technically.
Not so technically.
Yes.
And then, and then he's like,
then he goes over to Karen and Gus's house
and invites himself over to dinner.
He's like, hey, I'd like to come to dinner with you guys. And
I'd like to bring a date.
My girlfriend.
Yes.
And then, of course,
Bianca.
Karen and Gus are freaking out because they're like, hi, he's got a girlfriend.
Yeah, and they're so happy that he's doing something social.
Yeah. And that's where the scene ends. And then where does it start? Them sitting and staring on the couches.
Yep. And he's got his doll with him.
And he's like so proud. He's got this big smile and he's just totally oblivious to their reactions.
Yes.
And they're just staring like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
It's so great. Like, this is like one of my favorite scenes because it's like, I don't know, is this the inciting incident or would ordering the doll be? But you don't see the doll get ordered.
The inciting, I'm not sure. Like, I actually thought a lot about what incites this.
Yeah, because I don't really...
I think it's him meeting Margot, which doesn't happen necessarily in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know if that's...
Because he wants to be with her and he can't find a way to do it.
Yeah.
He actually likes her right off the bat.
He does, yeah.
And he can't find a way to be with her.
Yep.
Because he's just psychologically not able to connect.
Yeah.
So he gets this doll and he uses the doll to connect with everyone.
Yeah.
So he
I
has
don't
dinner.
know. I mean, I'd like to anybody's opinion. If you've seen this movie, let us know what you think the inciting incident is, because it's not.
There's not a psychological break point before this, because it was coming before. He was already in this state beforehand.
Yeah.
But that's what causes the impetus, is him actually wanting to be with
Margot.
And
I don't know. I still feel like it's like the doll and being like, I can't live a real life without having something to work with the world through, and him ordering the doll. But then you don't see.
But
him
why
order
does he
the
do
doll.
that? But why does he order the doll? It's because of Margot. Ultimately, I think.
Yeah, well, I think it's because he's lonely and because he wants.
It is, but I think once he meets her, and he's met her slightly before this movie. It's not the first time they met.
Yeah.
He does like her, and he wants to be with her.
But we don't see that until after he's dating Bianca.
I know.
We don't see that he's starting to get jealous of her until
we don't.
She gets a boyfriend, and he's got Bianca, the girlfriend, the doll, and she's flirting, and you can tell she's. But I mean, jealous,
the reason why he blows her off and can't. I mean, he does talk to other people, but not to her because he can't. Mm-hmm. He actually physically can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so the doll, and they have dinner together.
Yeah,
he actually has dinner with them,
and he eats off of her plate.
Yep, he cuts her food and eats it. Like they're a couple.
Yeah,
and he's super happy about it, and they just stare and have a really hard time, and they don't know what to do. So
no, they're totally
they're like,
oh
hey,
my goodness,
hey,
Karen's like, will you come help me with the food in the kitchen? And Gus is like, yeah.
He's like freaking out.
He's just like, my brother's insane.
Yes.
And she's like, shh, you know?
Right. So they make it through dinner. It's awkward. But they say,
she goes off and calls the doctor.
Yeah. Lars asks them if she can stay with them.
Oh, that's right. Because he says it's not proper. And she's a missionary. Even though she's a sex doll from Brazil with heavy, heavy makeup and fishnet stockings. And
she's not dressed like a missionary. Most missionaries. The sexy church, I guess.
But he's like, it's not proper. We're single, you know. And so they don't really offer. He asks if she can be put up in their house. And Gus is like, no. Right. And Karen's like, yeah, sure. And then he's like, and also she doesn't have many clothes because her luggage got lost on the way here. So can she borrow Karen's clothes? And Karen's like, no.
Yeah, then she has a hard time with that part.
Yeah, she's like, ugh. But they do eventually decide to help him out. And Karen calls the doctor. And the doctor said, no more monkeys.
Yeah. And her name is Bianca. I don't know if we mentioned that.
We did.
Okay. But yeah, and they're like, they calls the doctor and she's like, okay. And I think they say like, oh, I don't think she's feeling well. She should go to the doctor. Or
well, he says that she's not feeling well. Lars is the one that says that she's not feeling well. And he also said that she's unable to talk and she's in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And so, no, not unable to talk. She can talk. But what was it that he was saying? He was saying that she's in a wheelchair.
She has a heavy accent or something, and he's the only one that can understand her or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then he's like, she's not feeling very well because traveling made her sick. And so then that's when Karen's like, oh, well, we should have her get checked out. I talked to the doctor, and she says it's a good idea to get her checked out. Mm-hmm. And that's when we meet Dagmar.
Yes.
Who is also an awesome character.
Yes, a town doctor. I said that like 9 times there. And she goes along with it. She's like, this is a delusion. We just have to go with it until he can get rid of the reason why he needs the delusion.
Yep.
And so she arranges, she's like, Bianca's sick. She needs to be treated once a week. I need you to come here with her.
Yeah, he has to take her to treatments. And then she's like...
She uses that.
Sneakily gets him into her office. She's like, hey, come keep me company while Bianca's getting her treatments.
Yes, exactly. And then that's how she treats Lars.
So my question is, what treatments are they giving Bianca, and how are they giving them to her?
They never mention it, and...
There's no IVs, no suppositories, no
and he's not usually in there. Lars is primarily our viewpoint character.
Yeah.
At least in terms of that scene, those scenes. And he's not usually in there. He comes in later.
That's true. So Dr. Dagmar, by the time he goes in there, she's usually taking notes in the chart, and she's like, well, Bianca needs to rest for a while. The treatments are pretty rough, so...
Yeah, come see me in my office, and then they go and sit.
Come keep me company in the office.
And they hang out for like half an hour or whatever.
And she's like eating, and she's doing totally casual things. He has no idea that she's consulting him.
Exactly. Yeah, she makes it seem like it's not a regular appointment.
Yeah.
She doesn't like sit behind her desk with like a roll of note-taking paper.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. Yeah, she does other things. That's a good point.
Yeah. We're just doing a synopsis, so we should probably...
I know, but it's kind of complicated.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, we've done a lot of synopsizing up to this point because this situation is very different.
And we're assuming that everybody's not seen this movie.
Yeah, so why do we pick this movie? We'll get to that. But, I mean, so that we have the scenario set up. The scenario is kind of elaborate in terms of, like, other movies. So we have spent more time setting it up because you're like, hey, this guy with severe emotional problems has this sex doll he doesn't have sex with and takes it everywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't really show the emotional impact of this movie.
Yeah.
The doll is how everyone has to interact with Lars and how Lars interacts with everyone else.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Dr. Dagmar, she's like, everybody is going to have to go along with it because he will not recover unless, until he figures it out, And so, and of course, his brother and his sister-in-law are like, no, we're not going to do it. And
well, mostly Gus.
Mostly Gus.
He's very resistant the entire time until most of the way through the movie. I mean, he has the biggest change of heart regarding all of this.
Yeah.
So it does take him a lot. At first he refuses, and then he reluctantly does it, and like him and Karen fight about it because she's like, she's trying to do it in good faith, and he's just like, what am I even doing?
Yep.
Stuff like that. And then eventually he's like, he puts Bianca to bed for Lars,
Yes.
And then once Lars decides to do it, and he's like, oh, he's kind of like
Well, I usually am the one who puts Bianca to bed.
Yeah, and he's like, no, and he's like, okay, and he's like, doesn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
And he goes and like checks up on her later.
Yeah, so just really briefly, the whole town rallies around Lars and Bianca, and Bianca volunteers, this old lady's like, oh, by the way, Bianca told me that she wants to start volunteering at the hospital.
Yep, and she like reads books to kids, and she's on the PTA board.
Yeah, she gets elected to the PTA board.
Yeah, and so like the whole town just treats her like
she's a real person,
and person they really like.
Yeah,
and this is how they show Lars that they care about.
Yeah,
him.
because they've all been living in the same place. Everybody knows everybody, and they've all known Lars his whole entire life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure some of them recognize that his neglect is partially due to them too, because nobody was paying attention enough to know.
Yeah, no, they were never. And this is what Gus ultimately understands is that he. He's
the reason. He's one of the reasons why Lars ended up the way he did.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was just. I mean, there's a scene with him and Karen where he's like, because earlier in the movie they invite him to come live with them and he won't, and he's like, I can't believe when I moved back I made him move into the garage.
Yeah.
He's like, this was his house before I got here for years. I mean, he grew up in it and then he lived here by himself in it.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how lonely Dad was, and I was just so happy to get out of that situation because it was so miserable. I didn't think about how it would affect Lars for me to leave.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean, Gus has quite a bit of character growth. Lars has a lot of character growth. Bianca has character growth. I mean, it's through other people, but growth. She comes and she's... And this is a bit of trivia I'll give right now, but the doll actually has 9 faces that show her progression as a character. So she comes wearing heavy makeup, and it gradually gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and then her face turns more and more green as she gets sick. Oh. So there's a spoiler for you right there. Bianca actually dies.
Right. So, yeah. So we can talk about the arcs. Anyway.
Yeah, Lars's arc goes in, he's like in love with Bianca. He's dating Bianca. And then as he starts to heal as a person emotionally, Bianca starts to get sick because he realizes that she can't be there always. And so she ends up dying.
Yeah, she's not really fulfilling him emotionally back.
Yes, exactly.
Because she's like off doing all these interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got a schedule on the refrigerator and
he
everything.
Throws a fit because she had something to do.
Yeah, because she's not there for him to validate him emotionally. Because she's not a real person anyway.
Yeah.
And he just gradually realizes, subconsciously probably, that she's not giving him anything back.
Exactly. Yeah.
That all this time has been invested in something that can't return what he feels in there. Anyway.
And they have to call 911. And she gets hospitalized, and
they go through the whole thing.
Yep.
And the doctor,
they don't let him go back into the ER, because she's a patient, and like everybody, the whole town acts like there's something that Bianca's a real person.
But what's one of the main reasons why she gets sick?
Because Lars decided.
But why did he decide?
I don't know. You must have been watching more closely.
That's when he gets jealous of Margot.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Once he sees Margot with somebody else, he gets like super jealous.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he actually goes on a kind of date with Margot while Bianca's busy. And
that's when it really starts to happen because Margot goes out with some other guy, I forget his Eric, and they break up. Mm-hmm. And she's really sad. And then
he decides to help cheer her up, which is a
huge step for him.
Yep.
So they go on like a not date. They go bowling.
Yeah.
And they have fun. And then some of Gus's friends from his job show up, and they all kind of
they just have a lot of fun.
They have a lot of fun together. And it's like not really, I want to say,
there's no commitment.
Intimate. It's not it's very low key.
Yeah.
It's very friendly.
Yeah.
So there's like 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
It started out with just those 2, but like he could have fun in a group of people, like a big group of people.
Yeah, and you could tell he's still shy, he's still introverted, but you could tell he's enjoying himself.
Yeah, he actually has fun doing something social without Bianca around.
Yep.
And then when that not date is over and they're taking their shoes off, she's like, "Thanks, you did me, and I feel so much better."
And he's like, "I don't want you to get the wrong impression." He's like, "I'm not the type who would cheat," and she's like, "Oh no, I wouldn't either."
Yeah.
So there's like points for him there. He's dating a doll, and he doesn't want to cheat on the doll.
But he has all this emotion bound up in what it means to be with somebody
and to be a man. What it means to be a man, that's huge to him too.
Yeah, him and Gus have a talk about what it means to be an adult and be a man specifically, and one of the things was like, be there for people that you care about and don't cheat and stuff like that. But
do it
he's
even
like,
if you don't want to do it.
Right. And so when he's like, I can't be with you, and she's like,
She's like, I would never do that. I would never ask you to.
Yeah, as long as you're with her, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And then that's when she starts really going downhill.
She or Bianca?
Bianca goes.
Yeah, she starts getting sick, and it's funny because like they call 911 and
they have a fight.
He's with Dagmar. Oh actually. Yeah, he has a fight with Bianca, and they yell at each other.
Yes, and like I don't think I like his tone,
says the old lady.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they call 911, and she ends up in the hospital, and Dagmar, the doctor, she's like, Bianca's really sick, and then she turns to Lars, and Lars says she's dying, and afterwards, Gus and Karen are like, how could you let this happen? And she's like, I'm not doing anything. It's all Lars. He's the one that's choosing
to let her go.
To let her go, yeah. And so it's his progression, and then Bianca's progression, and everybody,
Yeah, and there's a scene where they go to the lake, him and Bianca, Lars and Bianca.
Yeah.
And he kisses her.
Oh yes. Oh, when she's dying.
This is like, this is
not
like,
a romantic. It's his letting go.
This is like super
emotionally.
painful. Yeah. And this is where he used to have fun as a child. Him and Gus and his dad was like the only real memories he had of enjoying himself with all of them together.
Yeah.
Was at this lake.
Yeah.
And he takes her there earlier in the movie, but this is the more pivotal one where he lets her go.
And he's crying.
Yeah, it's actually like really like
emotional.
Yeah, it's hard. And he kisses her. That's the only that's the only kiss in the whole movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just this one, and then he puts her in the lake,
mm-hmm.
and she's dead.
He drowns her.
Yes, she died. Anyway.
Really?
I don't think he drowns her. I just think it's symbolic.
I've always been confused by. I'm like, why did he put her in the water? It's not his personality to drown her.
No, I think she was already dead. I think that's just like she dies.
Okay, yeah, so then...
It wasn't mean. Like, he wasn't...
No, yeah. No, they have an actual funeral. They have, like, the preacher does the funeral thingy, and they bury her.
And the whole town is there.
Yeah.
And she's got a plot.
Yeah, everything.
Yep. And people are upset because, like, they, came together as a community for this person.
And her sickbed had flowers from the community and get well cards and I mean, watching Gus and Karen, they're concerned like Bianca's dying, and just knowing that that's mirrored by everybody in the town, like it's their concern not just for Bianca but for Lars, like why is she dying,
Mm-hmm. And at the end it's Margot, Lars, and the doctor left, and I forget exactly what they say, but she's like, I'm sorry she's dead. Margot says that. And he's like...
You want to go for a walk?
Yeah, and then the doctor kind of like smiles and like walks off because she understands where this is going.
Yep.
And then that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So he can finally be with the one he wanted to be with, but he had to go through this proxy.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, I'm like...
Having to learn to be with somebody, he had to do it with a doll first symbolically.
Yeah.
And then he could let that go later and be with the real person that he wanted to be with.
So my question is, if they get married, like 10 years down the road. So do you remember that girl I dated, Bianca, the one that died? I mean, how are they going to handle it? Is he ever going to recognize
I think
that
the
she wasn't
delusion's
real?
gone, and he might not even bring it up again.
Like, maybe it just leaves his brain. I mean, I know it's an illness.
Because there's like no scene where he intentionally orders the doll. It literally just appears. He has no memory of it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing. Like he had to spend a lot of money. They're thousands of dollars, I guess.
Like $5,000 or $6,000. Bianca for the movie was $6,000.
There you go. Not a small chunk of change to just have disappear from your bank account and then have a crate show up.
Yep.
On like a human-sized crate.
Yeah, no kidding.
And he had to open the crate and then haul this 125-pound sex doll over to his brother's house
without a wheelchair.
Without a wheelchair,
got it stolen too.
Air quotes stolen.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did all that,
Yep.
without realizing that it was what he was doing.
Yeah, so
I think the other end would be the same, where he gets rid of the delusion and he's just with Marco.
Yeah. I'm going to skip this whole page because we've already talked about pretty much everything here. We're just going to talk about a few points here and there. But the show and tell, so they show the whole community rallying around Lars. Karen could have just said, oh my goodness, the town is rallying around him. She could have just said that to Gus in passing. But they actually show, like, they like some of the girls in the town give Bianca a haircut, you know.
Like, better get it right because it's not growing back.
She's like, it's not growing back. And, you know, the people volunteer Bianca, which is work for them. You know, they have to dress her, they have to bathe her, they have to get her ready. And they actually do everything. They treat her like she's real. And it's work. It's not, you know, but they rally around Gus.
And she does weigh like 120 something pounds. So it's not insignificant to give her a bath.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, and then, okay, something that was kind of funny to me. Gus is like, well, Karen's doing pregnant women's yoga, and Nolan's like, been there, buddy. And I'm like, you've done it, buddy.
I know. I was being supportive, and I did pregnant yoga.
He did pregnant lady yoga with me. One thing that I thought was awesome was Lars saying, I'm not sure how well these treatments are working, and the doctor, any professional's first reaction would be to bristle at something like that because it's imaginary. I'm doing my job. I'm doing the best I can. Dr. Dagmar doesn't bristle. You know, it just shows.
She's like, well, yeah, it's really complicated, and you know, it's like, you know, this is a really complicated illness.
Yeah.
It's hard to treat.
Yeah, and it just shows that how mature she is as both a professional and an individual, and that she truly understands what's going on with Lars, you know, that it's all inside of him. And one thing that was really, really, really poignant to me is when you know, when they very first meet Bianca and she goes to church for the first time and the church lady gives her flowers. Lars says, "Those are nice, huh? And they're real, so they'll last forever." It's indicative of how he feels about people, you know, like nothing lasts forever to him, to his dad, his mom, his brother leaving, you know, and so he wants Bianca because she will last forever. She's a doll who will never die, you know, but then like what you're saying, he's not emotionally fulfilled by her. And so he recognizes that fake is not what he wants. He wants something real. Mm-hmm. I thought that was very poignant.
Oh, I didn't notice that one. Yeah, there's some, one of the scenes that I liked was, so as Bianca's getting treatment and he's talking to Dagmar, that's not the only thing that's happening. He can't be touched by people.
Oh yes, we totally forgot about that aspect.
So she's trying to treat
She asks him how he feels about Karen because she's the new in-law, and he goes, "Oh, there's something wrong with her."
Right, and she's always giving me hugs and stuff like that.
And she's offended when I don't want her to hug me, and there's something wrong with her. And Dagmar's like, "You can't fix Karen," but she's like, "There's something really comforting about a hug," and he goes, "No, it hurts."
Yeah, he says it feels like when you get really cold and then you stick your hands in hot water and how it burns.
Yeah.
It feels like that.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. So she like puts a finger on his arm, you know, she's like, how's that? And he's like, that's not, you know, that's uncomfortable. And then she puts her hand on there and he jerks it away.
No, he was like, it's okay. But then she puts her hand on his neck.
Oh yeah, on his neck. Yeah. And then he freaks out.
Yeah.
She's like, but anyway, gradually over time, she can like put her hand on his arm and she's like, how's that? And he's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But it turns out the reason why is because he doesn't want to lose Karen because he really cares about her and his mom died during childbirth.
Yeah, and he's talking about Bianca having babies, you know, and he's like
she can't have any.
She can't have babies, and the thought that, you know, that
therefore she can't die in childbirth.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, the thought of having Karen dying in childbirth or whatever, he totally hyperventilates in her office, in Dr. Dagmar's office, and she's like, breathe, put your head between your knees, breathe.
Yeah, he starts having a freak out when he thinks about Karen dying in childbirth.
Yeah.
Because that's how he lost his mother and his father and his brother.
Yeah,
emotionally.
Much. Yeah.
Not, not literally.
Yeah.
So he's like talking about it's so dangerous to, have kids and to care about anyone because then you lose them.
Yeah.
So that was one of the scenes that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. Let's see.
So he doesn't hate Karen because at the beginning of the movie, he gives her the blanket.
Yeah, it's a symbol of his
relationship with a mother.
Yeah.
And a woman he cares about.
Yeah.
And he gives it up casually at the beginning, but then you really realize later on how important it is to him. And then that scene shows you how much he really does care about Karen.
Yeah.
And anyway, everything turns out.
Anyway, so this movie, would you say this movie is completely character driven?
Yes.
Yes, there's absolutely no plot driven elements to it.
Everything happens because of someone else. It all makes sense. Everyone behaves in character at all times.
Yeah.
They may not be super well-rounded characters because they don't need to be. But I mean, there's different aspects. He's got his brother and then like the three women in his life.
What did you say about the women in this movie while we were watching the movie?
They're all angelic. Basically,
these are all very well written characters
and they're well rounded, but they have like different emphases.
Yeah.
So like Karen is his relationship with a family.
Yeah.
Dagmar is his has an intellectual relationship with him.
Yeah.
Margot has a romantic relationship with him, and that each fulfill their purpose while being like actual real people.
And the
not
three of
being,
them
like,
don't have
ridiculous.
hardly any. I mean, Margot has a tiny bit of character growth but not even. I mean, none of them. They don't really. They are there. I mean, this movie is so character driven, but it is not about them. It's about Gus and Lars, and how they, So it's a very, very character driven, but they're plot devices without feeling like plot devices.
No, they interact. They're real. Like, they are real people.
Yeah.
They contribute emotionally or intellectually or romantically
to the story.
Yeah. And they don't even have to always do it with words. Margot barely ever speaks, but she has a ton of facial expressions.
Yes.
She reacts to him being with Bianca, and
so if you have not watched this movie, it's a comedy, and like us giving you a little synopsis, it's funny, and it's a feel good movie, and
it is. There is a lot of like heavy emotional stuff, but it is mostly funny. Yeah, I think, and not in like a laugh out loud raucous kind of way.
No.
But it is.
It's intellectual humor.
It's funny. Yeah. I mean, like, these people have to act like this doll is a real person. Yeah. And it's not easy for them. No. Yeah. Especially at first, and then once they do, it's hard for them to stop. Yeah. And how people how a whole town of people deal with that.
Yeah, and they basically act like she's. It's like they've gotten to the point where they've treated her like she's real for so long that she is real to them.
Yeah, because like when they have a fight and then the lady gives them like a dressing down, she's like, you can't get another girl like Bianca as good as Bianca, so you better
treat her right. I don't like that tone of voice you're using, and Bianca has a life. She's not going to wait around for you all day. And
yeah, exactly.
It's so wonderful. Anyway, so I'm going to give it trivia now. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so Bianca was treated like a real person, not just in the movie, but also she had her own trailer. She was dressed privately, and she wasn't in scenes where she wasn't on set when it was a scene that she wasn't in. It was all done to help Ryan Gosling stay in character. And Ryan Gosling's, a lot of his interactions with Bianca are improvised by him. And the movie was shot in 31 days. So Karen was not pregnant because she progresses in her pregnancy about 6 months worth, or actually probably more like 4 months. Yeah. And then I already told you the doll has 9 faces.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be they could easily shoot that in a month. It's just a drama in a few key locations in this town.
It could be a play, easily set on stage. There's no special effects or anything like that.
No special effects. So I mean, why not? It's basically and it's like an hour and 40 minutes long. Yeah. It's like 2 or 3 TV episodes. Yeah. And that's it. Mm-hmm. I mean that in a good way. Yeah. I mean, it's a really good story with these interweaving plots. It's funny. There's real emotional connections and like pain these people go through as they grow. Yeah. And then have a resolution at the end, where they come together and they can be,
Yeah. One scene that I want to mention as a teaser for the viewers, whatever, listeners, and that I don't want to talk about because I don't want to spoil it, is the work party that he takes her to. It's their first technical date. Yes. And so it's amazing. It's the first time he goes out in public with the doll. And it's...
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's good.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Because everybody knows she's coming, I think.
Margot sent out a memo, but let's not talk about it. I don't.
Yeah. So, but I mean, because like when they ring the doorbell, like people like freeze because they know it's coming. Yeah. And then how each of them deal with it is
very entertaining
because they talk to people.
Oh, and the perverted guys. Yeah. No. Okay, we can't. Anyway.
But it's good. My point is that they you could react like this, and there's a person to represent that reaction and this reaction and that reaction. Helpful, not helpful. And it's, that way throughout with everybody, there's all these different interweaving, emotional arcs. It's how I wish they wrote action movies these days.
I was put a little bit more time on the emotions.
I was listening to a podcast, and this is going to come up. It was actually about Jurassic World, somebody doing a review of it.
I don't want to hear what they said.
This has nothing to do specifically with it, but he makes an excellent point. Mm-hmm. It's the Geek Gab podcast, just so you know, so I can credit this. But he's like, special effects have gotten so good, people don't go to see special effects anymore. So we've come back around where plot matters.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The only time you recognize special effects is when they're bad. Yeah. Yep. So now it's come back to plot. Like, can you write a good story? Special effects don't matter. Everyone expects perfect special effects. Yep. This movie has a darn near perfect story and didn't need special effects. Yeah. I wish this level of intricacy, emotional impact was available in these other movies that have more action in them. And
Yeah, it would make for very long movies.
No, they're already 2.5 hours of boring.
Well,
they become boring because they don't have the emotional
plot,
impact for the character.
Yeah, plot, emotional growth, that stuff takes time.
Well, this movie's an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
You could easily make a 2.5 hour movie with an hour's worth of action piled on top of it.
That's true.
And that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
But that hour they spend developing characters, they could learn from this movie, is what I'm saying. Here's where it comes back to writing and writers. Have your characters be like these characters in terms of
their depth. So they feel real. Like you feel like you know them.
Yeah.
Not
Bianca,
you, but the readers.
Bianca's not the only real girl. There's actually real girls and boys and men. And they act like people would really act in these situations, and like how they all react differently and then with each other. Mm-hmm. It's very, because Gus doesn't want to do it and Karen does want to do it, and she knew something was wrong with him the whole time, and like it was obvious to her, but not to Gus. And so when this happens, there's that conflict between them where she was right and he was wrong. He doesn't want to do it and she does, know. And they eventually, they have this talk later and they come to, they work it out.
Is that one of your takeaways?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's count that as one of my takeaways.
All right. What are your other takeaways?
Oh, gosh, it's such a big one. I mean, it's so important to make characters that you like.
Yeah.
I wanted Lars to be okay. I wanted Karen and Gus to be a family again.
Gus is the most unlikable character besides the perv coworker, but you still like him because you relate to him, Yeah,
he's not a bad guy.
No.
He was in a hard situation too. His mom died, his dad pretty much stopped caring.
Yeah.
And so once he was old enough, he left and he went and had a nice life and he got married to a nice lady and they're having a kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got a job and, he cares about that part of his family, and he does care about Lars. He just doesn't know how to deal with him because he was a kid too. When his dad died, he left as soon as he could. Mm-hmm. He didn't know how to raise Lars. Oh, pacing on this movie.
So that's your next takeaway.
Yeah, this movie has no action in it, but I'm not bored.
Not once was I bored, and this is I've seen it several times now, and I was not bored once.
How did you do that? Because I can't even go see an action movie where it's blowing things up half the time, and then I lose interest for the other half of the movie because I don't care about what's going on anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
This movie doesn't do that. They actually managed. I mean, that makes it sound like this is great. You can keep people's attention on the characters and what the characters are doing and how the characters. This is all interreactions between characters.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the only time that it's not is when Lars is with the doll by himself. But even that, how he treats her shows how he's feeling and how he's growing as a person as well.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's 3.
Oh. I wasn't counting.
It's at least 2. I
they
feel like
intermingled. But
I feel like 1 and 2 kind of flew together.
1 and 2 should be enough.
Yes.
We've quoted that
Beautician
before.
and the Beast.
We've quoted it before in our podcast.
We have. But if anything, just character. Mm-hmm. And having characters that have depth, having characters that your main characters be likable, and you want them to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, are you ready for mine?
Yes.
Okay, I've got 5.
Okay.
So I'm going to plow through them.
Okay.
Because I couldn't narrow it down. I'm like, these are all so important. Okay, so characters need to show their emotions. So Gus in the waiting room, when they first take Bianca to the hospital or to meet Dr. Dagmar, and everybody's staring at them, and he's like antsy, he's uncomfortable, but he doesn't tell us that. He shows us that. So if your characters are nervous, they need to have a physical reaction. If they're angry, it's the same. Like their hands fisting and their face is flushed. If they're excited, they should be bouncy, rapid heartbeat, things like that. And I'm going to recommend a book called The Emotion Thesaurus. It's called The Emotion Thesaurus, A Writer's Guide to Character Expression. And this is one of the best books I've ever used when it comes to trying to figure out how to portray what my characters are feeling. And I don't use it as often. I haven't actually used it probably in a year or two, but
you used it initially.
I used it all the time, and it was super, super helpful. Okay, so then my next takeaway is not every character needs growth. Not every big character needs growth, because Margot and Dr. Dagmar and Karen are huge characters in this movie, but they don't require growth,
They didn't need to grow. They were helping someone else grow.
Exactly.
They were each pivotal in their own way to helping Lars.
Yep. And Lars and Gus have huge growth, not little growth. And when you have little growth, you need to have lots of little growth in multiple characters. So anyway, okay, so then antagonists don't have to stay the bad guy the whole time in a comedy and a romance type movie or a drama or something like that. But in other genres, they do have to stay the bad guy the whole time. You don't want in a fantasy or a thriller for the bad guy to monologue and turn good at the end because that is unsatisfying. Nolan's rolling his eyes right now.
Star Wars.
Which Star Wars?
The recent ones.
Oh, well, Darth Vader does that.
No. I mean, yeah, but it's not unsatisfying.
It's not, because they foreshadow there's good in him, there's good in him, there's good in him. They foreshadow it. Yeah, so antagonists don't have to say the bad guy the whole time. They can, like Gus was pretty antagonistic at the beginning, but this movie doesn't really have a real antagonist-protagonist relationship in it.
But, I mean, he's antagonistic to the process, and then he accepts the process, and then he is also healed by the process.
Exactly. All right, then, setting sometimes doesn't matter. This story could have taken place in any small town anywhere. It could have even taken place in a big city with neighbors that know each other, you know?
Like in an apartment building or something where they're in close proximity and have lived there for years.
Exactly. So, but if the setting, and this is my last takeaway, if the setting isn't big, you have to make the characters and their development paramount. Because if the setting doesn't matter, then your story has to be held together by the emotional and the relationship glue, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are my takeaways.
Good. Those are good takeaways.
Thank you.
So this movie has a lot going for it. It's not incredibly long, so it's probably the shortest time commitment of any of the movies that we've even brought up.
No, we watched an hour and a half one. Jurassic Park 3 was an hour and a half.
So there you go. Second shortest.
Yeah, second shortest, and it's 3 million times better than Jurassic Park 3 was.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Low bar to clear.
Yeah.
And that was a high budget, tons of money.
Yep. Big actors.
Very good actors.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Sam Neill and
William H. Macy and Tia Leone. These are established actors and actresses that could you could make them act any way you want to and they will sell it. Yeah. But you couldn't write them well enough to be any good. Yep. Just another way Hollywood is failing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Just saying. That's right.
Hollywood is failing you.
Take that, Hollywood. You're failing to entertain me. That's why your ticket sales are down. Learn from me in my podcast.
Anyway.
he said arrogantly. Is that, can you do that?
So we've given lots of closing thoughts on this.
We have a lot to think about. This movie made us think and feel a lot of
feels. You had a lot of feels.
There's a lot of feels in this movie, and they're good feels, and it's complicated. Yeah. Like, life's complicated. Yeah. And you feel that in this movie.
Yep. All right, so the end.
All right, so we're done. Wrap it up. Review us wherever you get podcasts and can review us. Yeah, only if it's 5 stars. Oh. If you want to leave a 5-star review, maybe 4, then do it. 1 stars, please don't. I think you can say that, right? Give us an honest review if it's 5 stars.
Oh my gosh. Nolan. Inappropriate.
No, plenty of podcasts I was like...
Okay, give us a 5-star review.
Please leave a 5-star review. I'm asking you to please do it. But of course you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. So we have we're in the 70s now on listeners.
Boom.
Weekly listeners. Guys.
Literally dozens of fans.
Yeah, seriously, guys. Thank you for supporting us.
Yeah, thank you. And Patreon.
Oh yeah, patreon.com/selfpublishstrong. And
I feel like there's one more thing we should mention.
I always mention my email address, Andrea@selfpublishstrong.com. So yeah, send me an email if you have any questions. And yeah, I think that's it for today.
Okay.
Talk to you all later. Bye.
Bye.